What's going on, everyone? So reports have came out that James Harden is torn between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Houston Rockets, and that makes zero sense to me. Why and what reason would James Harden be torn? It's very simple. You go to Philly and you try to contend for NBA championships, right? You're on a team that expectations is to win an NBA championship. They just got rid of Doc Rivers. They hired Nick Nurse with the intent of winning an NBA championship. Daryl Morey is a guy that loves to push chips to the table and is very likely going to do whatever it takes to put together a roster that he believes can win an NBA championship. That's the scenario that we're looking at. And that very likely is what the Philadelphia 76ers are going to do if James Harden stays. They were just in a position to where they very well should have came out the Eastern Conference, and you run it back, maybe you can't. Maxey gets better another year, maybe you add another piece or two, and boom, now you're in a position to win an NBA championship. The other side of that coin is he goes to a Houston Rockets team that he's not going to be contending for an NBA championship. There is no expectations for that. They're not, yes, they want to get star level players. They want to kind of expedite the rebuild a little bit. They don't want to stay in that like rebuild purgatory that many teams fall into. Houston is willing to trade some of their guys. We've even heard to maybe go get some pieces. And maybe Houston can build a contender, right? They do have a lot of really young assets, really talented young players, and they have draft picks and other teams' draft picks, and they have a lot, right? Maybe they sign James Harden, and then on top of signing James Harden, maybe they go and get like a Chris Middleton or something like that, and then they put together a package to whatever. Or hey, maybe they bring James Harden and Joel Embiid to the Houston Rockets, right? Because if James Harden leaves, I think it's a very real possibility that Joel Embiid ends up wanting out as well, and Houston would have a package that they could put together to go do so. And they could easily put together a contending team. Realistically, would they be able to do it in one season? Probably not. I don't think that that's going to happen. But you have one of two things. You have the option of contending and competing for an NBA championship, which James Harden himself has said that that's his only goal and that's what he wants to do. Right? The whole reason he left the Brooklyn Nets was because he didn't believe that they were really trying to play for championships. And he had all the issues with Kyrie Irving and, all of that, right? And so he goes to Philly and does nothing. He lays a big goose egg the first year and was just an absolute disaster. And it was like, well, I don't know why they did that. But James Harden says, oh, look, I had injuries and that made me, slower and gave me problems and blah, blah, blah. I'll be better next year. And to his credit, he was. He actually was very solid this year for the 76ers, right? He and Joel Embiid really had some quality moments. This season, he gave you 21, 6, and 10. So he was a guy that really did. And look, and even in the playoffs, he had a couple games where he looked very solid. For the most part, he was the guy that everyone expected him to be, the guy that kind of chokes and just doesn't show up consistently. But, he's a guy 38% from three, 45% from the field. He's typical James Harden. And he had a closer to James Harden type of season this past season. Joel Embiid ended up winning the MVP. So there was that. Like, that was solid. So it makes a world of sense for James Harden to stay with the Sixers. You're comfortable, you got it, you got your co-star, you have a team that is a legit contender. They were the best team in the league on the back half of the season. They were top 5 in offense, top 5 in defense, really good. Gave the Celtics all kinds of trouble and looked like a team that could win an NBA championship. Why wouldn't you want to stay with Philly and do that when you said yourself that that's what you want to do? You're only getting older. At this point, he's 33 years old. He's only getting older. And you're on a team in Philly that will go all in to win a chip. You're on a team in Philly that will do, with Daryl Morey, that will do whatever it takes to win an NBA championship. He will trade whatever assets and stuff like that he has if he can get the pieces. James Harden even took a discount this past season or this to end up going and getting PJ Tucker and to try to build a contending team in Philly. You did all this stuff to try to win an NBA championship this year. You fell a little short, but you should feel confident. You should feel good. Like, hey, we're, maybe a piece away. Even if we run it back, we were right there. We had an opportunity. I need to be better. I need to play better, and we can get in. Right? Like, that's how he should be looking at this. He should be looking at this as like, I have a real opportunity to finally win an NBA championship. I have a real opportunity to get things done, right? And you can make an argument the Eastern Conference is easier than the Western Conference. Outside of like Milwaukee and Boston, like there's nobody that you're really like, wow, like that team is terrifying, right? That has that much more talent than you. Miami is fantastic, but they don't have more talent than the Sixers. That's my point, is that, yes, there are teams that could shock somebody and come out, but do they have more talent than Philly? I don't think so, right? Now, problem with Philly is Joel Embiid and James Harden both have disappearing acts in the playoffs, and that's a real concern. But so do several other guys that are big marquee guys. I mean, like, look at Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Those two had disappearing acts in the playoffs on numerous occasions. Guys like Anthony Davis is hot and cold game to game. He has problems in the playoffs, right? Like most guys have issues and concerns in the playoffs here and there, right? But James Harden had his brilliant moments in the playoffs. James Harden had playoff games where it was some of the best playoff games he's had, right? And so if he can kind of get that, not saying he has to go drop 40 a game, but if he could just be a 20 plus, 28-8 guy, which we know he's capable of, and Joel Embiid can get back to being Joel Embiid, they very likely could end up coming out of the Eastern Conference. I mean, if Philly came out of the East next season with, let's say, the exact same roster, no one would be shocked. Like, no one would be like, damn, didn't see that coming. Right? Like, everyone would be like, yeah, I mean, they have James Harden, they have Joel Embiid, Maxi's really good, PJ Tucker, like, they have some quality players. They have some real talent. Tobias Harris, like, things like that. Like, they have a really good squad. So it's not something that is so bizarre, but I don't understand what the struggle is. You either want to contend and compete for an NBA championship, or you don't. And you go to Houston, you live like a king in Houston, you don't have any pressure. You don't have any expectations. Nobody's going to be looking over your shoulder, talking about you. No one will probably talk about you, period. Right? Like, if you can lead the Houston Rockets to the playoffs this year, then, you'll get all this praise and all this glory, and people will talk about how great of a player you are and blah, blah, blah. Like, Houston is the safe, warm, oh, it's okay. Like, the parent that's like overly protective of their child that, and you're just like, the child isn't doing anything with their lives. It's like, oh no, Randy's only 30. He's got his whole life ahead of him. Like, okay, but he doesn't even have a job, right? Like, that's what Houston Rockets to James Harden would be. Right? Oh, it's okay. We're not expecting an NBA championship. We got this young core, this young team. All the media would feel that way. Everybody. You go to Houston, it's the safe bet. There's no expectations. No one's going to expect you to lead them to an NBA championship. If you don't perform in the playoffs, you don't perform in the playoffs. I don't know why Houston would want James Harden, though, if I'm being honest. Because, James Harden isn't like a model superstar that you want like your players to kind of pattern themselves after, right? This is a guy that goes to Vegas in between playoff games and, loves strip clubs, loves gambling, loves to just party and live his best life, right? Like, do you really want some of the young guys on the Houston Rockets, especially some of the young guys that are already having questionable like life choices and stuff like that and question marks? Like, do you want James Harden being that influence? Not just that, but James Harden was living like a king. Like, Houston let him do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it. Houston allowed him to, basically bend to every will and every need that he ever had. And so that's why he's contemplating that, because he can go there and basically do and live his life however he wants. And he doesn't have an organization with expectations of winning. He doesn't have an organization that's breathing down his neck to be professional and do this, that, and the other. But is that what you want for your young talent? Right? Like, is that what you're trying to do? And if you're going to go and build a contending team, well, then James Harden has all that pressure. So why did you go to Houston? You might as well just stayed in Philly. You might as well stayed with Philly and tried to win with James Harden, right? Like, if you win in Philadelphia with Joel Embiid, like, you're going to be living like a king. You'll never have to pay for anything in Philly ever again. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense for Houston to want it, but for whatever reason, it sounds like they do. And James Harden wanting the Houston Rockets, to me, it just sounds like James Harden just doesn't want to. He wants to do what he wants to do and not have to worry about the pressure. You know, though I think he's basically looked at it as like, I'm not going to win an NBA championship. I'm okay with that. I might as well be where I want to be and do what I want to do and live my life. And that's fine. That's his choice. If that's what he wants, then cool. Right? But it's disappointing because this is a guy that is arguably one of the best scorers we have ever seen. And it's just going to kind of be all for nothing. You know, in 10 years, he's going to be forgotten. No one's going to be talking about James Harden. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you think, like, yeah, this really is a decision? Do you think, no, like, it doesn't make any sense? Like, what is there to decide? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, let me know.